The summer before I started training to be a tour guide at the Metropolitan Museum, I spent 2 solid weeks there, traipsing up and down staircases, riding every elevator, tracking down hundreds of artworks scattered throughout the quarter-mile-long building. It was called a treasure hunt, and it was supposed to be fun, but to me, it was stressful. The idea was to get us tour guides in training thinking about the 10 objects we'd soon select for our highlights tours. But I was plagued by self-doubt. How was I, a journalist and English major, possibly qualified to lead visitors through one of the world's great art museums? But when classes started in September, I realized that only a couple people in our group had any formal training in art. Susan was a therapist, Sheila a librarian, and Barbara, once a businesswoman, was now in the business of being a grandma. Afterward, we'd adjourn to the nearby Pan Q and argue about our top 10, the 10 must-see works of art for a visitor with only an hour or two to spare in the museum. We did it with the zeal of sports fans. I'll trade you my notes on Rembrandt for yours on Van Eyck. By early October, we had to turn in our first 3. For me, it was a no-brainer. The Congo power figure, a hollowed-out wooden sculpture from Africa, burying its nail-studded chest like the power lifters in my gym. The Astor Court, serene but otherworldly, a garden without a single flower, just cool green plants and jagged limestone rocks. And a Tiffany stained glass window, because his wild and exuberant sense of color always reminded me of my interior decorator mother. Sheila wanted me to do Carpo's marble sculpture, Ugolino and His Sons, showing the starved, imprisoned count gnawing his fingers as he considers the unspeakable act of eating his own children. It's got cannibalism, she said. People will love it. But I was busy researching Bruegel's The Harvesters, because his odd Netherlandish peasants and butterscotch-colored wheat fields always gave me a melty feeling inside. I think we all picked things that moved us within the constraints of museum guidelines. The objects had to be important, represent a diversity of cultures, time periods, and materials, large enough for people to see and laid out along a logical route. Still, it never ceased to amaze me what people chose: a Colt revolver, a Turkish saber, and the kind of crossbows that became popular after Game of Thrones. We spent a long time trying to talk Barbara out of a Renoir painting of 2 young girls at a piano. Susan said, "It's so sweet, it makes my teeth hurt." Naturally, Susan, the psychotherapist, gravitated to works about sex and death. Sheila, on the other hand, was a librarian who believed in the canon, and she thought there were more important Renoirs, like Madame Charpentier and her children. The last work I picked for my top 10 was Modigliani's Reclining Nude, because it reminded me of college, when I used to get stoned and stare at the Modigliani poster over my bed while listening to Marvin Gaye croon, "Let's Get It On." We practiced over the summer, and by the time the next September rolled around, the words to my top 10 flowed like lyrics to a song. But every now and then, imposter syndrome came flooding back. Was I really qualified to lead tours at the Met because I'd once hung a Modigliani poster in my dorm room and a Bruegel made me cry? Turns out the answer was yes. Most people who came on our tours didn't really care that Bruegel was born in 1525 or Modigliani died when he was 35. They were drawn to these grand public spaces for the same reason that I was, because at some point in their life, they'd seen a painting or a sculpture or a fragment of a vase and said to themselves, I will never be the same.